All right, so I want to talk for a little bit about a concept that is a little bit deeper in the psychology of relationships, in the psychology of love, particularly from a woman's perspective. And I would say I would put quotation marks around love. Um, if you listen to my channel at any length, you'll probably know that I don't like the concept of earning love and loving someone in a sort of merit based way, particularly when it comes to you know, putting a guy on a pedestal, so to speak, because he's such an achiever or, whatever. The reason why is because it has to do with hypergamy. And when it comes to real love, real love is loving somebody despite their faults. Real love is loving somebody when they don't do anything for you. You know what I mean? And so much so, so many relationships from a woman's perspective are based on love and adoration out of a respect for him and his attributes and his qualifications and his accomplishments. And this is, in my viewpoint, not really what real love is. What it really is kind of a hypergamous love, or I'm proud of him because of his successes type of love. And really, that's a merit based love. And it's like, well, not only does that waste a lot of your time because you're constantly trying to impress your woman, but also it kind of takes away from who you really are as a person. Because if you're, and this is just hypothetical, of course, I'm not saying all men are trying to do this, but I do believe that being in a blue pilled psychology, a blue pilled mindset, really causes a lot of guys to, particularly when it comes to the ego, right? When you really break down what the ego is, it causes a lot of guys to want to earn respect and adoration. And really, what I don't know if there's a term for that, but I would call it, just off the top of my head, I would coin it as some type of lapdog mentality, right? What is a lapdog? A lapdog is constantly showing uh, adoration for its owner. A lapdog is constantly trying to impress the owner. A lapdog, comes and goes as the owner says, right? If you think of what a lapdog is, it's literally a dog. It's a pet that like lays on your lap, and it's constantly suckering, if you will, at the beck and call of the owner, right? So a guy who's constantly trying to earn and achieve respect and adoration from others is kind of a lapdog. He's not an alpha. He's not a man's man. He's a lapdog. Like, he's trying to do things, be a good person, whatever, in order to get respect and adoration from his loved ones, right? I don't personally. I don't want anything to do with anything anything revolving around that. I'm not trying to earn anyone's respect or love. If you love me, you love me, and I'll show love to you. But I don't think it should be based on merit. I don't think love or respect should be based on earning something. And to me, that's a sort of empty pursuit, and it's really kind of a blue pilled pursuit. Now, I'm not saying there aren't guys out there who are genuinely just good guys, but if you ever spend any time, with children, you ever spend any time, whether it's with a friend's kid, or you were like, for instance, in a college, I was a volunteer, or not a volunteer. I did what's called work study, where you would, I was on a scholarship, or excuse me, not scholarship, financial aid, and for financial aid, they kind of hook you up with a job or whatever at your college. And one of the jobs they had at the college was to work in the child care center, right? So I worked. I did work study with kids in the child care center, and a lot of what you'll see, you'll notice, is particularly with young boys, is it's really only with young boys. It's not with young. At least I never saw it with young girls. Young girls, and which is interesting because like if you ever work with kids, you'll see the difference in gender. Young girls are solipsistic, and their world, their ego and world revolves around their psychology revolves around themselves and how they fit into the world. Whereas a young boy, oftentimes his kind of ego is revolved around meritocracy, right? Meaning like he views himself in the world as a as a force of good, and he will try to earn the respect and good things. And it's a weird psychology thing, and I think it has to do with our biology, but I also think it's nature versus nurture. I also think it's a part of culture where men are sort of in this earn it mentality where they have to earn respect, earn love, earn money, earn, right? So I just want to use that as a sort of backdrop and as a sort of example as I want to talk about this guy. I came across this in my email from Quora. I get emails from Quora, and the question was, who is the most badass person you've ever met or known? And this woman, she says, the gentleman pictured my ex Mike is the person that I and everyone knew him, who knew him would agree was the most badass person who ever walked the earth besides Jesus. Wow, I mean that's a pretty large compliment there. That's a pretty jeez. So she's got this guy up there with Jesus, right? Let's look at this guy. He looks like a real do-gooder. He was a quiet man, rarely said a word, but when he did, it was usually making people smile or laugh. He did anything for anyone when he saw a need without asking for anything in return. If he had money in his pocket, he gave it to someone who needed it more than he did. If I asked him, what happened to the money you made today, he would shrug his shoulders and say, I don't know, I guess I'm not supposed to wake up in the morning with money in my pocket. If he saw someone on the curb who looked hungry, he gave that person whatever he was about to eat himself. If he didn't have food to give to that person, he gave them a couple bucks to get food. If someone looked cold, Mike gave them his jacket, knowing his eye is on the sparrow and he'd be fine. Something would come along for himself when he needed it. Mike was the strongest man we knew, blah, blah, blah. And so she just goes on and on about this guy Mike and how he built a koi pond and how great he was, and da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And it's just like you realize like it's just interesting because you realize like so many women view relationships like this, like, oh, he's just this great guy and he's the ideal guy that all women want, and it's like you realize how much women do put emphasis on a man's character, but not in really the right way, right? I emphasize character. I always emphasize character on my channel. But this is a different kind of thing when it comes to character. This is kind of a pedestalizing a guy as if he's a hero, right? Who has very little flaws. And she might even say he has some flaws or whatever. But she's really pedestalizing this guy based on his his meritocracy, his merits, and his his earned respect, right? So, why is this bad? Why is this something that is why is this something that's problematic? Because it's really funny, because when a guy like this messes up, or let's say not even this guy messes up. Let's just say, let's juxtapose this guy to say another guy who's like maybe addicted to alcohol or something, right? When you really get down to it, you realize that her motivation for loving this guy is based on his actions, not on his person per se, not on who he is, faults and all. It's really just based on how good of a guy he is. And when you realize that, you realize, oh, what that does is it sucks. I don't know if this guy particularly, but guys in general, it sucks them into this merit-based behavior to the point where they're and you know, to the point where they're seeking out praise, and to them being good is like an achievement, and it's like a drug where they're like constantly being, you know, they constantly get their fix of their quote unquote fix of praise and adoration from others, right? And particularly it probably makes them feel really good when a woman looks at them like they're, oh, he's my hero kind of thing, right? And then you realize at a certain point, well, that's just, it's not really, a lot of it is not necessarily who he is. It's really, he's just doing these things so he can get that praise. And then you have to, you know, like I said, you use that juxtaposition of like, say this guy, and then also say like an alcoholic, right? A woman might not love an alcoholic anymore because he's an alcoholic. And so you realize like, oh, a woman's love for me is contingent upon my merits and my achievements and my successes. If I'm not successful enough, she won't love me anymore. You know, think about that for a second. Like if she's not, if I'm not this do-gooder type of guy, I'm not her hero anymore, she won't love me anymore. And you'll realize this if you're ever in a relationship with a girl who kind of pedestalizes you for whatever reason. She thinks you're super cool, or you're a super popular guy, or whatever. And then if you lose that along the course of the relationship, and this is why guys like Rollo, this is why I've had a problem with guys like Rollo Tomassi in the past, because he says, oh, just continue to be that guy, continue to win her over. You're always gaming your girlfriend, you're always gaming your wife, meaning you got to be the best she can get, or you know, in her eyes, and all this kind of stuff. You realize you're just you're a lapdog, you're a performance artist, you're a dancing monkey, right? You're constantly doing these things to keep her interested in you, and if she gets bored, or if she sees you in a different light, or she realizes you're not the type of guy that she fell in love with anymore, whatever, if things change, your behavior changes, her feelings change, she meets a guy who's better than you, then what happens? Then you're shit out of luck. You lose the quote unquote love game, and then you realize at a certain point, oh well, that's just not love. It's a respect or adoration based on merit. And then that's kind of when you look at female love and female nature as something that's immature, right? If she only loves you when you're, you know, Dudley Do Right, you're the achiever, the good guy, whatever, and she gets bored and cheats around, or just straight up dumps you for somebody else when you're on a low point, you realize like, oh well, that type of love is not real. That type of love is phony and fake. And so many women so many women have this type of love where like, oh, I love him because he's the man of my dreams, because he does this and this. Oh, he's so good with kids, he's such a good provider, or he's such a he's so civic minded. He's good, you know, like this woman says that he would give the shirt, he would literally give the shirt off his back, and he would give money to the poor people, and he wouldn't eat. And it's just like, you're not in love with a human being, you're in love with a concept, you're in love with a superhero kind of. And it's like, this is where you get that old like my hero type of behavior from women, you know. And when you realize that like there's guys out here who are trying to be this, there's guys out here that are trying to achieve this so that they can feel good about themselves, and you realize like she's not really in love with you, she's in love with your ego, and your ego is constantly trying to be stroked because you want the adoration, you want the positive feedback. So that's the only reason you're even doing all this good stuff, right? It's the syndrome, you know, this is like, you know, guys like this I feel like never really grew up. You know, they're always trying to, they've always got this childlike mentality where like, oh, if I do good, I'll get a reward, and mommy will love me, or, you know, daddy will reward me, and you know, like, it's like, you know, like your whole life is just based around. And it's like, you know, it's one thing, like, you know, I used to work downtown in a city, and I would give, you know, sometimes I would give homeless people money, or I would, you know, I would, it would be like wintertime, I'd have gloves, and I take my gloves off and give it to a homeless guy who didn't have gloves and his hands were cold or something, because I'm like, yeah, I'm on my way home anyways. I'm just gonna get on the bus and go home, so I'll be warm. Don't worry about it. Like, that's one thing. You know what I mean? It's like, there's nothing wrong with giving. There's nothing wrong with being a good guy and giving people money for food or whatever. Like, I'm not dissing that at all. What I'm saying is, if your motivation to do that is so you can get adoration from others or this, that, and the third, and I'm not saying that that's what this guy is, or really anybody in particular necessarily, but if you pay attention to, like, she didn't say, he's the guy that I love for better or for worse. He had his faults, but I still loved him. It's all about this pedestalizing of this hero character, and she just goes on and on about his giving and his merits and da 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 da. It's like, you're not really in love with a real guy. You're in love with a guy who was performing, who thought of himself as some kind of superhero. That's not really life. That's not really reality. Most human beings are just not like that. And then you see these women who like fool themselves into thinking that that's what love really is about. And then if they break up or the guy dies or something weird happens, like, she'll never love again, because she has this pedestalized viewpoint of this one guy who she just thought was a superhero, and no other guy is going to live up to that, and she's constantly disappointed. And it's like, how do you live your life like that? And it's just it's interesting to notice. It's interesting to notice that so many women are like that. But again, this isn't, bottom line, this isn't love, right? This is a adoration based merit relationship where, and so many relationships are like that. Oh, he's such a good provider, and I'm so proud of him. And guys, even like Rollo Tomasi said that, like, your woman should always respect you. Respect is more important than love. Because it's almost like, it's like, I'd rather a woman look at me and be like, yeah, he's got a lot of faults, but I still love him. Like, yeah, he doesn't amount to much. There's other guys who have more money than him. There's other guys who are cooler than him, stronger than him, better looking than him, but I just love him. I love him for him. There's a great old song. I can't remember who sings it. Anyway, I can't remember who sings it. Some punk band. It's from the 90s, and it's like, it goes, she loves me. How's it go? She likes me for me. It's not because of my. I fucking can't even remember how it goes. Something about she loves me for me, not because of my money. Something like that. She likes me for me, And it was an old song. I forget the tune right now, but you want a woman who loves you for you, not because of your money, not because of your merit, not because of your good looks or your success or your status. And so many guys are caught up in this. And unfortunately, this is one of my biggest problems with the red pill. Guys like Andrew Tate, Rollo Tomasi, even Donovan Sharp. These guys are fucking off the red pill because they're constantly using these concepts such as, oh, you always got to be gaming your wife, and you always got to have, respect is better than love, and you always got to be the best guy your wife can get, or whatever. And it's like, dude, you're a dancing monkey. You're a performance artist. You're constantly trying to impress your wife. You're constantly trying to impress your girlfriend. And it's like, dude, I don't want no parts of that. I'd rather be single than always have to compete for my woman's love or adoration. Like, if you love me and you want to be with me, it should be for who I am, regardless of how shitty I am, you know what I mean? And it's like, it sounds weird because you're like, oh yeah, you can just be a shitty person and she'll still love you. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. Like, obviously, crappy people, like, people don't want to be around crappy people. I'm saying you should have some character and you should be a good person. But if you're constantly performing in order to impress, what does that really, a lot of what happens is like, when she gets bored, then I can sense that she's bored, so I got to do this next thing to impress her, and like, it gets weird, man. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, she should really love you for who you really are, and who you really are is not something that you have to perform. You know what I mean? Like, you should just be comfortable with who you are, and she should really want to be with you for who you are, not for like her perception of you or your good self or your good side or the good things you do. You know, those should just be a bonus. You see what I'm saying? Like, oh yeah, I totally love my man, but sometimes he does these cool things, and that just makes it all the more better. But I would still love him if he did or if he didn't. I would still not be bored if he did or if he didn't. And if you realize so many relationships out here are based upon that concept, which is that, oh, I've always got to impress my woman. And anyway, guys, I think I made my point. I'm a little tired today, but I just want to talk about that for a second. Merit-based love and you know, merit-based respect and adoration. It's a weird thing, but a lot of guys get caught up in it. Like, oh, I got to press her always, and I got to be this guy. And you realize that it's ego. And boy, you really should study the ego, like by Freud. And when you really start to see what ego is, you start to see so many people who are really controlled and sucked in to, you know, giving all their energy and their time to satisfying their own ego. And the self and the ego is a terrible thing on the one hand, but it's a very interesting how do I put it? It's like a magnet. It's a consuming thing, and you're like, oh wow, like so many people are doing things just for their ego, just to satisfy their own ego. Like, oh, I've got to achieve this new thing, and it's not even based on money. It's not based on happiness. It's not based on fulfillment. It's based on satisfying your own ego, your own desires. And when you really start to see it in men particularly, because usually women live vicariously through a man's ego. A woman is satisfied when her man is doing good. A woman is satisfied when her man is successful. A woman is satisfied when her man achieves this or this or this. Women live vicariously through a man's achievements, right? A man achieves things so he can get the respect and adoration from a woman, so much so. And particularly this is regarding and involved with his ego. Right? Oh, I achieved this, or I did this, or, you know, look at me, you know, praise me, give me adoration, give me the respect. And I don't like that at all. I don't like that in men, and I don't want to be around any guy who's like that. You know what I mean? I don't want to be around a guy who is trying to be a good guy for his own ego, be a good guy for this respect and adoration. Like, it's, I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying like it's. I'm not saying, you know. Don't get me wrong to say like there's nothing good with merit. There's nothing good with achievement. There's nothing good with helping people out or anything like that. I'm not a nihilist. Like, I'm not sitting here saying like you could just be a complete jerk and people should still love you per se, kind of thing. Like, there's a fine line, but there's a difference between somebody who's like, yeah, you know what, I worked hard for something and I had a goal and I wanted to help or something like that, and it came out of a good place. There's a difference between that and like, oh, I did it all for my ego, you know. And I guess you could say on the one hand, like, objectively, like, well, good happened either way, whether the guy did it for his ego or he did it out of a good, you know, just because he really wanted to help others. Is a fine line there. There's a fine line between your ego and actually, you know, genuine charity or genuinely helping others out. But I would say, like, it's just, you know, when a guy's really doing most things for his own ego, it's a kind of selfishness, right? And a woman who pedestalizes a guy like that it's also her selfishness. You know, she's loving a guy for herself. She's not loving him for him or loving him out of, you know, anything that's any kind of higher scenario. It's really just out of her own ego because, oh, he's an achiever, he's this, he's that, and that's why I love him. And you realize, like, oh, that's a kind of cringy proposition when you really think about it, because it really is the self. It's the ego, you know. And anyway, it's yeah, it's something that is, I think it's problematic, because it really is, it kind of, in a way, it's empty, you know. In a way, it kind of robs people of really enjoying life, because they're constantly trying to satisfy themselves. And what's funny is, like, it becomes a drug, because like, if you do good or you achieve something, like you're like, oh yeah, that feels good for maybe a day or two, and then you're already on to the next thing to achieve. It's like, dude, just sit back and enjoy life, man. Life is not that long, like you're constantly chasing after these little dopamine hits, right, from from achievement, and your girl is like constantly like, oh, he did this other thing today, oh, now he did this other thing, next week, and and it's like you're wasting your life, really, in a way, like just to what, satisfy your ego, right? Satisfy your desire to be desired, or your desire to be respected, or like. And what's funny is that, like, I mean, he might have changed some lives, some people might remember him, but for the most part, it's like when you're doing things out of your own ego and out of your own self, it just kind of, to appease yourself or to appease others and have others respect you, you're just kind of like, it's kind of an empty life in a way, because I don't know, man. There's just something. I guess you just have to experience it, but there's nothing wrong with doing good. There's nothing wrong with helping people and feeling good about that. But a lot of times people do that in order for others to respect them, and they feel like, oh yes, I deserved this. This is what I sought. If you're doing good things in order to get the praise and adoration, like, that's a sure sign. That's a dead giveaway that's coming out of your ego. That's coming out of yourself. And it's like, in a way, I guess it's like, I understand it, because, Johnny does good, Johnny gets rewarded, right? But really the best type of, even the Bible says this, the best type of giving, or the best type of good gesture, is really to do something when nobody can see. Do something when you're not going to be rewarded for it. And you're not going to be rewarded for it, but you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, right? You're doing it because you genuinely want to help somebody. It doesn't matter if anybody knows about it or not. You'll have guys like this, and I don't know this guy at all particularly. I don't know this guy from Adam, but you'll have guys who just, they're trying to build up a shrine around themselves. They're trying to build up a legacy. And a lot of guys, particularly in the manosphere, the red pill manosphere, you'll hear guys talking about legacy. Will people remember you when you're gone? And it's just like, that's so your ego. That is so ego, right? Oh, you want to build up a legacy around yourself? That's ego. Oh, you want people to remember you when you're gone? That's ego. Oh, you want your woman to pedestalize you as the coolest guy she knows, or the most giving guy, woo woo woo, and she's going to tell everyone about it, and you're going to feel proud about yourself. That's ego. Like, I'm not saying that, like, again, I'm not saying that doing good is bad, but if you're doing it just for the adoration, just for the respect and praise you get, it's just kind of phony. It's kind of, oh, I'm a legend, right? Like, nah, man, I don't want to live my life for that. And I don't want any kind of love that has to do with that. I think you guys get my point. I'm going to end it there. Appreciate you guys listening to this Jay Lee Northwest Podcast. Peace.